My mother made me kneel on the kitchen floor every morning until I stopped feeling pain. When I finally chose a man who treated me like an equal, she tried to kill him with scissors. I thought Thanksgiving would be the day my mother finally accepted Marcus, because she'd been cold about the engagement for months, but she agreed to come, and she even brought flowers that she arranged herself. For 20 minutes, everything felt completely normal. Relatives laughing in the living room, turkey steaming on the table, my aunt complimenting the ring that Marcus had picked out after 3 months of secret shopping. Then my mother reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was wrong, too tight. Her thumb pressed into my knuckle until I felt the bone shift underneath, and she started twisting my engagement ring like she was trying to unscrew a bottle cap from a stubborn jar. My finger turned white, then red, then purple, as the blood stopped flowing. 30 relatives sat frozen around the table with their forks suspended in midair. No one moved to help me. No one said a word. When Marcus stood up and asked her to stop hurting me, she picked up craft scissors from my aunt's ribbon station, where she'd been helping cut decorations before dinner. Her hand wasn't shaking and her eyes weren't wild. She was calm, focused, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment for years. She lunged at his throat. Marcus caught her wrist 3 inches from his neck, and he held her there without yelling or panicking until my uncle tackled her from behind. It took 3 men to pin her down on the dining room floor, while someone finally remembered to call 911. That was 2 years ago. This morning, she called from her halfway house in Oklahoma, asking the same question she always asks whenever they let her use the phone. Can I ever forgive her? I still don't know the answer to that question, and I'm not sure I ever will. My mother believed she was giving me the greatest gift a mother could give her daughter, which was the knowledge of how to make a man happy and keep him satisfied for life. Every morning before school, my sister Chloe and I knelt on the kitchen floor for 30 minutes straight, with cold tile pressing against our knees, and our hands folded in our laps, and our eyes cast down toward the grout lines. We recited the same phrases over and over until they stopped feeling like words and started feeling like breathing. I am grateful for the man who will one day lead me. My purpose is to make his life easier. I exist to serve, not to be served. The first time I complained about the kneeling, I was 7 years old and my knees were aching so badly that I started crying. My mother handed me a toothbrush and pointed at the bathroom without saying a single word. I scrubbed grout until my fingers cracked and bled, and when I started crying harder, she made me kneel for another hour as punishment for showing weakness. I stopped crying by age 8, stopped complaining by 9. By 10, I could kneel for an hour straight without feeling anything at all, which was exactly what she wanted. She was building a daughter who couldn't feel her own pain, because a woman who can't feel pain can't complain about suffering. I always thought Chloe would escape with me when the time came, because we suffered through the same kitchen floor together and recited the same humiliating phrases and scrubbed the same tiles until our hands were raw. Sisters were supposed to protect each other from the world, but Chloe believed every word our mother said without question, absorbing each lesson like a sponge soaking up water, until she couldn't tell the difference between love and control. At 14, she started dating a boy named Kyle, who treated her exactly the way our mother said a real man should treat his woman. He snapped his fingers across the room and she came running with whatever he wanted. He criticized her clothes and she changed immediately without arguing or even looking annoyed. Our mother watched this unfold and smiled like she was witnessing a miracle, like all her years of training had finally produced the perfect daughter. For Chloe's 15th birthday, Mom bought her a $300 sewing machine so she could hem Kyle's pants and alter his shirts to fit him better. The card said, "For my perfect daughter who truly understands her role in this world." I found Chloe in the bathroom a year later, pressing cheap concealer into a bruise that spread from her eye socket all the way down to her cheekbone. She saw me standing in the doorway through the mirror and actually laughed. "He just gets passionate sometimes," she said, her damaged eye swollen almost completely shut. "It means he really loves me when he loses control like that." That's when I knew I'd already lost her to the same poison our mother had been feeding us since childhood, and I knew I had to leave before I lost myself too. I poured everything I had into school because academic achievement was the only path out that didn't require my mother's approval or permission. Perfect grades in every class, every extracurricular activity that would have me. 4 years of work compressed into a single envelope from UT Austin with a partial scholarship that would cover most of my tuition. I ran to the kitchen to tell my mother the news, still holding the envelope like it was made of solid gold. She was standing at the counter teaching Chloe how to fold cloth napkins into decorative swans for dinner parties. She barely looked at the acceptance letter before turning back to the napkins. "That's nice, honey, but I wish you'd put this much energy into finding a good man who could take care of you properly." Then she took the letter from my trembling hands and dropped it directly into the trash can, right there with the coffee grounds and the eggshells and the scraps from breakfast. 4 years of work, 2 seconds, gone. I fished the letter out after she left the kitchen and wiped off the egg yolk as best I could. The paper was stained and wrinkled, but I kept it anyway because it was proof that I was worth something outside of her approval. I assumed Marcus would be like Kyle and every other man I'd dated for him, because controlling behavior was the only kind of love I'd ever been taught to recognize. Checking my phone constantly, demanding my location at all times, telling me which friends I was allowed to see and which ones made him uncomfortable. But Marcus was different. He had 3 younger sisters who had trained him to understand understand what women actually deserved from the men in their lives. He listened when I talked, not the fake listening where someone waits for their turn. He actually heard me. He remembered things I mentioned weeks later, bringing them up in conversations when I least expected it. Planned dates around what I enjoyed, not where he wanted to go. When he proposed in a quiet restaurant with fairy lights, my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold the ring box steady. He didn't rush me. He just waited on one knee until I was ready to say yes. I called my mother from the parking lot afterward, still crying happy tears because some desperate part of me still hoped she might share in my joy. Her voice went cold on the second sentence of my announcement. Does he make enough money to support you properly? A good husband provides for his wife so she doesn't have to work outside the home. I hung up. Marcus held me in the car while I cried. He didn't promise everything would be okay because he knew better than to make promises about my mother. The next 6 months were a war of sabotage. She sent our engagement party invitations to the printer with the wrong time. Half our guests showed up 3 hours late to find us cleaning up. She told my bridesmaids the dress fittings were canceled. I found out when none of them showed. She called the caterer directly. Added shellfish to the menu. I'm severely allergic. The caterer mentioned it casually a week before, just confirming the shellfish edition your mother requested. My stomach dropped. Every time I confronted her, she tilted her head with that disappointed expression she had perfected over decades of manipulation. Oh my goodness, I must have misheard what you told me. You know how scattered I've been lately with all the stress of the wedding planning? Her eyes never matched her words. Her eyes were always smiling, like she was winning a game, only she knew how to play. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I went to the police station to file for a protective order against my mother because the sabotage had escalated to the point where I was afraid of what she might do next. The officer behind the desk was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She listened to my story with a neutral expression that never changed, typing notes into her computer while I described the kneeling and the phrases and the trashed acceptance letter and all the wedding sabotage. When I finished, she looked up at me with something like pity mixed with exhaustion. Ma'am, what you're describing sounds like a difficult family situation, but I don't see anything here that rises to the level of harassment under Texas law. She hasn't threatened you directly. She hasn't damaged your property. Family disagreements about wedding planning aren't criminal matters. But she's trying to hurt me, I said, hearing how weak it sounded even as the words left my mouth. The officer sighed and pushed a pamphlet across the counter toward me. Have you considered family counseling? Sometimes a neutral third party can help with these communication breakdowns between mothers and daughters. I left the station with the pamphlet crumpled in my fist and tears burning in my eyes, understanding for the first time that no one was going to protect me from my mother except myself. I already told you about Thanksgiving, the flowers my mother brought, the 20 normal minutes where I actually let myself hope, the twist of my ring until my finger turned purple and the blood stopped flowing. But I didn't tell you what happened in the corner of the room while my uncle was pinning her down. Chloe stood frozen against the wall the entire time, watching the paramedics splint my dislocated finger and photograph my injuries for the police report. She watched Marcus answer questions from the officers while keeping one hand on my shoulder to steady me. She didn't say a single word, not to comfort me or condemn our mother or ask if I was going to be okay. When our eyes met across the chaos of the room, she immediately looked away like she couldn't bear to acknowledge what she was seeing. That silence from my own sister hurt worse than the scissors ever could have, because it meant she was still choosing our mother's side even after watching her try to kill the man I loved. My mother was released on bail 2 days after Thanksgiving, with strict orders not to contact me directly or indirectly through any third party. I thought that meant safety. I was wrong. Monday morning, my boss Jennifer called me into her corner office and closed the door behind us with a heavy click. She sat on the edge of her desk instead of behind it, which I'd learned was her way of delivering bad news. Your mother called the main switchboard 3 times this morning before I even got to work, she said carefully, watching my face for a reaction. She claims you've joined some kind of cult and your boyfriend is holding you hostage against your will. Pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. Showed her the police report from Thanksgiving, photographs of my hand with its splint and bruises and the cuts where my ring had sliced into the skin. Jennifer's expression softened when she saw the evidence, but then hardened again with something else. I believe you, Natalie, but she's also been calling HR and leaving messages with accounting. And apparently she got through to someone at Patterson Industries yesterday. She told them you've been stealing proprietary data from their account. Patterson Industries was our biggest client, worth $1.3 million annually. I went straight to HR after leaving Jennifer's office because I knew I needed to get ahead of whatever lies my mother was spreading before they took root. The HR director, a man named Thomas, who always smiled too much, listened to my explanation with his fingers steepled under his chin and that smile frozen on his face like it had been painted there. This sounds like a personal family matter, he said. When I finished, we really can't get involved in disputes between employees and their relatives. It sets a problematic precedent, but she's harassing my work workplace, I said. She's trying to destroy my career. His smile didn't waver. Have you considered taking some time off to work through these family issues? We have an excellent employee assistance program that offers counseling services. I lost the Patterson account 3 days later. 7 years of relationship building. Gone because HR thought my safety was a personal family matter. The first wellness check came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. I woke up to flashlights sweeping through the bedroom curtains. Red and blue lights splashing across the ceiling. For 3 seconds, I thought someone had died. Marcus grabbed my arm in the darkness. Don't move until we know what's happening. We lay there listening to boots, pounding up the stairs toward our apartment. The knock shook the pictures on our walls and rattled the dishes in the kitchen cabinets. Police, wellness check. We need to see the female resident immediately. I opened the door in my bathrobe, mascara smeared from sleep, hair tangled, looking exactly like someone who might be held against her will. The officer looked past me at Marcus like he was sizing up a threat. Ma'am, are you here of your own free will? Is there anyone preventing you from leaving this residence? That question. I answered it 6 more times over the next 2 months. In our apartment at midnight, in my office during a presentation, in a restaurant during our anniversary dinner. Each time I had to prove I wasn't a captive. Each time my mother's lies hung in the air like smoke. 3 weeks before the trial date, my phone rang from an unknown number and I almost let it go to voicemail. It was Chloe. Her voice sounded different, smaller, hollowed out. I finally read the police report, she said. All of it. The photos of your hand. I didn't realize it was that bad, Natalie. I was standing right there and I didn't realize. I wanted to say, you watched them splint my finger. You looked away when I needed you, but I just listened. Kyle left me, she said after a long pause. Mom made over 40 calls to his workplace in 2 weeks. HR, his supervisor, the ethics hotline. She told his own mother that he was beating me and that she needed to cut him off to save him from himself. I waited. His mother believed her, Natalie. She stopped speaking to him, called him a monster. Kyle came home and found the voicemails, and that's when he packed his things. She was crying now. Real tears. First I'd heard from her since childhood. I started therapy last month, she whispered. My therapist says I've been enabling mom my whole life. I didn't even know what that word meant until she explained it. I don't know who I am without her voice in my head, she said. I know, I said. Me too. The prosecutor called 3 weeks before the trial date. Your mother's attorney reached out this morning, she said. They're offering a plea deal. She admits to misdemeanor assault, serves 6 months in county jail with no psychiatric hold, and she'd be out by summer. I sat in silence. If you accept the deal, you don't have to testify. No cross-examination, no sitting in the same room as her. It would all be over. Marcus sat across from me at the kitchen table. He didn't tell me what to do. He never did. He just said, whatever you decide, I'm here. Part of me wanted the deal. No courtroom. No reliving the worst moments of my life. No watching her manipulate the jury with her tears. Just peace. Just an ending. But then I thought about Chloe. The bruises Kyle left on her face. The sewing machine with the card that praised her submission. The kneeling and the phrases. I thought about the next daughter my mother might find. The next woman she'd teach to kneel. What happens if I refuse? I asked. Then we pursue the full charges. Felony assault with a deadly weapon, mandatory psychiatric evaluation, real prison time. But juries are unpredictable. I had 2 choices. Safety for myself or protection for women I would never meet. Marcus squeezed my hand once. That was all. Tell them no deal, I said. We're going to trial. My mother arrived at the courthouse with her entire church group surrounding her like a wall of righteousness. Matching prayer shawls. Signs about honoring thy father and mother held up for the cameras outside. She had organized her own cheering section for the trial, and they were ready to perform their roles with practiced sincerity. Marcus sat in the front row directly behind me, close enough that I could feel him there without turning around. The prosecutor walked me through Thanksgiving first. The ring, the scissors, the 3 inches between the blade and Marcus's throat. I answered each question as calmly as I could. Then her attorney stood up. He walked too close. His voice was soft, almost gentle. Isn't it true that your mother has always wanted what's best for you, even if you disagreed with her methods? I looked at her sitting at the defendant's table, hands folded, eyes glistening, the perfect worried mother. She believes that, I said. That's exactly what makes her dangerous. When my mother took the stand, she cried with theatrical precision, tears on and off like a faucet. My daughter has been brainwashed by radical feminists, she told the jury. That man she married has poisoned her mind against everything I taught her about being a good wife. She dabbed her eyes. The church group nodded. I only wanted to protect her. I only wanted her to have a good husband, a real family. Is wanting that for your daughter really so wrong? She believed every word. That's what made her terrifying. In her mind, she was the victim. She was the hero. Then the prosecutor called Chloe. I hadn't seen my sister since that phone call. She walked past our mother without looking. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. She described the kneeling on cold kitchen floors that we endured every morning, the phrases we recited, the toothbrush punishments, the birthday card that praised her submission while I got nothing but disappointment. Jury members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One woman in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. "Can you describe what happened with Kyle Davidson?" the prosecutor asked. Chloe's jaw tightened. Mom didn't just call his workplace, she called his mother, told her Kyle was beating me, that he was dangerous, that she needed to cut him off to save him from himself. The courtroom went silent. His own mother believed her, Chloe said. She stopped speaking to him, called him a monster. Kyle found the voicemails. That's when he packed his things. She looked directly at our mother for the first time. "You didn't just get him fired. You took his family. You destroy everything you touch." My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You ungrateful child." Her voice echoed off the walls. "I gave you everything. I taught you how to be a proper woman. This is how you repay me?" The judge slammed his gavel. "Order bailiff!" But the jury had seen it. The mask had slipped. The crying mother was gone. Something raw and hungry had been hiding behind those wet eyes. They led her back to her seat, still muttering, still glaring at Chloe. I felt Marcus's hand on my shoulder from behind, the same steady presence that had been there through everything. The jury watched it all unfold with expressions that told me they finally understood. Guilty on all counts. The judge pronounced the sentence with a finality that echoed through the silent courtroom. 18 months in state prison, mandatory psychiatric evaluation and treatment, a 10-year restraining order that would take effect immediately upon her release. I thought I would feel relief, joy, some kind of release. Instead, I felt nothing at all. They led my mother away in handcuffs. She didn't scream. She just stared at me with hollow, empty eyes as the door closed. I watched her disappear and felt nothing. Maybe that was her final gift, teaching me how to stop feeling. Chloe moved in with us 2 days after the trial. Nowhere else to go. She'd been staying in a motel near Kyle's old apartment since he left, paying by the week with savings from odd jobs. I didn't know that until she told me in the car. She was broken in unpredictable ways. Some nights she raged about how I'd ruined everything by refusing to be normal. Other nights she sobbed apologies for every time she watched Mom hurt me without speaking up. "Every decision I make, I can still hear her voice telling me I'm doing it wrong," she told me one evening. We were sitting on the couch. Marcus was in the kitchen pretending not to listen. "I know," I said. "Me too." Last week, Chloe enrolled in community college. She wants to become a counselor for women who grew up like we did, the ones who don't recognize abuse because it looks like love. My mother served 14 months before early release. The restraining order means she can't return to Texas for a decade. She still calls from her halfway house whenever they let her. I delete the voicemails without listening. I already know what she has to say. My mother spent my entire childhood training me to be a victim. She taught me to kneel, to recite, to stop crying, to stop feeling. She thought she was building a perfect, submissive daughter. Instead, she built someone who knows exactly what abuse looks like. Someone who can spot manipulation before it starts. Someone who chose a partner based on how he treats her, not how he controls her. She spent 27 years trying to break me. She failed. I have a husband who treats me as an equal, a sister who is learning to heal, a career I rebuilt from nothing, and a life that belongs entirely to me. This morning she called again from whatever state she ended up in. Same question she always asks. Can I ever forgive her? I don't know the answer to that question, and I'm not sure I ever will. Maybe someday I'll find peace with it, maybe never. But I know one thing for certain. My mother wanted me to kneel. I'm still standing.